Have you seen the price of gold?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, eh?
I know you've had an insane season and you've done an amazing job, but I don't need you to worry about much else other than just trying to keep those plants running.
From a 5-year-old tagging along at his grandfather's gold mine in Alaska to becoming the most recognized young miner on television, Parker Schnabel has lived a life that most people only dream about. His name became synonymous with grit, ambition, and gold. But behind the cameras, behind the massive machinery and the record-breaking hauls, a far more complex story was unfolding. One filled with personal loss, bold financial risks, heartbreak, and a relentless drive that never seemed to switch off. So what really happened to Parker Schnabel? Keep watching, because every answer leads to something even bigger. A childhood built on gold. Parker Schnabel was born on July 22, 1994, in Haines, Alaska, to Roger and Nancy Schnabel. He grew up alongside his brother Payson in Porcupine Creek, Alaska, a small community surrounded by the kind of wilderness that most people only ever see in photographs. His parents ran a construction business, but the true pull on Parker's early life came from his paternal grandfather, John Schnabel, who owned and operated the Big Nugget mine. By the time Parker was 5 years old, he was already following his grandfather around the mine site, watching how gold was pulled from the earth, and learning more in one summer than many adults learn in years. He spent his childhood holidays and school breaks working at the Big Nugget mine, and by the time he entered his teenage years, he had learned how to operate heavy machinery, including excavators and loaders, before most kids his age had even started driving. John Schnabel was not just a grandfather to Parker. He was a mentor, a role model, and the single biggest influence on everything that came after. When Parker was just 16 years old, John handed him the keys to the Big Nugget mine and told him to run it. That decision was extraordinary for several reasons. John was already a legend in the mining world, and handing control of an entire operation to a teenager took a kind of belief in that teenager that only comes from years of watching someone prove themselves. Parker did not flinch. He stepped into the role of mine boss and led a crew of men who were twice his age, managing equipment, making decisions, and dealing with the daily pressure of keeping a real gold mining operation alive. The cameras from Discovery Channel were rolling during all of this, and Gold Rush fans got to witness the young Alaskan take on a responsibility that would define his career. Gold Rush first aired in 2010, and Parker appeared from the very first season alongside his grandfather. He was initially a supporting presence on screen, but audiences quickly connected with him. The combination of his youth, his knowledge, and his refusal to back down from any challenge made him stand out immediately. By season 2, John had formally stepped back and handed control of the Big Nugget mine directly to Parker, making the young miner one of the most talked-about figures on the show. The first 2 seasons of Parker running the mine produced 34 ounces in season 2 and 192 ounces in season 3. Those numbers might not sound enormous compared to what followed, but they represented something more important than gold. They were the foundation. Parker was learning from every mistake, absorbing every lesson the land and his grandfather had to offer, and building a work ethic that would carry him far beyond anything the Big Nugget mine could contain. Then came the moment that changed everything. After graduating from high school, where he had played varsity basketball and considered studying geology or mining engineering, Parker made a decision that no one expected. Instead of enrolling in college, he took his entire college trust fund and used it to finance an independent mining operation in the Klondike goldfields of Canada's Yukon Territory. He was 18 years old. He leased ground from veteran miner Tony Beats at Scribner Creek, a tributary of the Indian River near the junction with Dominion Creek.
On Indian River, Parker Schnabel's chief mechanic, Shane Smith, starts his day at the airstrip cut.
The terms of the lease favored Beats heavily, but the ground was proven gold-bearing territory in one of the richest placer districts on the planet. Parker was all in. The move to the Klondike marked the true beginning of his independent career. He was no longer just the grandson working at a family mine. He was a mine boss with his own money on the line, his own crew, and his own ground. The pressure was real, and Gold Rush audiences watched every ounce of it unfold. That bet, made with a college fund and a level of confidence that bordered on reckless, turned out to be one of the smartest moves anyone on the show had ever made. What makes the early part of Parker's story so compelling is not just the gold he found. It is the fact that a teenager stood in a place where everything could go wrong, with men far older and more experienced watching and waiting, and chose to keep digging anyway. That stubbornness, rooted in years of watching his grandfather do the same thing, became the defining characteristic of his public identity. The loss of Grandpa John and what it cost Parker beyond gold. For all the gold Parker Schnabel pulled from the ground over the years, nothing shaped him quite as deeply as losing his grandfather. John Schnabel passed away peacefully in his sleep on March 18, 2016, at the age of 96. He had been an active miner from 1984 to 2014, and he had watched his grandson grow from a curious 5-year-old on the mine site into one of the most successful young miners in the history of the Klondike. Discovery Channel honored John with a special tribute episode called Remembering John Schnabel, and the response from fans made it clear just how beloved he had been. Parker had spoken many times about what his grandfather meant to him. During a Facebook Q&A, he told fans that he had no unresolved issues with John, that they had talked about life, loss, work, and love in ways that gave him everything he needed. He said he truly felt he had gotten the most out of the relationship, and that he believed John would say the same. But the absence of that voice, that steady presence behind every big decision, was felt. Parker has never stopped crediting his grandfather publicly for the skills, values, and relentless work ethic that built his career. John's death also inspired the creation of Gold Rush, Parker's Trail, which premiered in 2017. The spin-off series sent Parker and a small crew on an expedition along the historic Chilkoot Trail, the same grueling route that early gold rush prospectors traveled in the late 1800s in search of riches. Parker described the journey as a tribute to his grandfather's generation, a way of understanding what those early miners endured and connecting more deeply with a history that had shaped his own family. More than 70,000 of the roughly 100,000 people who attempted the Chilkoot Trail during the original gold rush never reached their destination. The route was brutal, and retracing it was Parker's way of honoring a legacy far bigger than any single mine. Parker's Trail ran for multiple seasons and took him to some of the most remote gold-bearing regions in the world. He explored Papua New Guinea, Guyana, Australia, and later South America, including Peru and Bolivia. Each location brought new challenges and new discoveries, and the series gave audiences a side of Parker that the main Gold Rush show did not always capture. Away from the pressure of hitting season targets and managing massive crews, he was more reflective and more vulnerable. The altitude sickness episode in Parker's Trail, where he became dangerously ill at one of the world's highest mine sites and had to receive intravenous treatment just to keep going, became one of the most talked about moments in the spin-off's run. The personal loss and the global exploration that followed it did something important to Parker's story. It gave him depth. It was easy to watch a teenager turn his college fund into a gold mining empire and assume he was simply lucky or simply fearless.
It'd be pretty nice to be on gold already.
Yeah, no kidding. I wasn't expecting you to hit anything like this yet.
No, me either.
But the grief of losing a mentor and the choice to channel that grief into something meaningful told a different story. Parker was not just chasing gold. He was chasing connection, legacy, and the kind of meaning that cannot be weighed in ounces. The relationship and breakup also became part of the public narrative around this period. During Season 6 of Gold Rush, Parker introduced Australian veterinary nurse Ashley Yulee to audiences. The two had met after one of his international trips, and Ashley had moved to Alaska to join the mining operation. Their relationship played out on camera for about 2 seasons, but by December 2018, Parker confirmed the split. He was honest about it, in the way that had always made fans trust him, saying, in his own words, that he had never really made the relationship a priority, and that she deserved better than that. He went further, saying that it was a real shame, and that he knew she was doing what was best for her. The breakup did not derail him. If anything, it reinforced a pattern that fans had noticed for years. Parker Schnabel treated mining the way some people treat breathing. It was not something he chose when the time felt right. It was just what he did, constantly and completely. The personal cost of that focus became something he acknowledged openly in later interviews, including a conversation with People magazine in 2024, where he talked about how difficult it was to explain his lifestyle to anyone outside of it. Mining season in the Yukon does not leave much room for the kind of steady domestic life most relationships need. Rumors later linked him to Sheena Cowell, an assistant producer on Gold Rush, after a photo of the two circulated online. Neither Parker nor Cowell confirmed a relationship publicly. Parker has since kept his personal life largely out of the spotlight, preferring to let the mining work speak for itself. That decision has not hurt his public image. If anything, the privacy has made fans more curious and more loyal. The gold numbers. To understand what Parker Schnabel has built, the numbers have to be part of the conversation. They are extraordinary, and they did not happen by accident. His career gold total exceeds 50,000 ounces, worth well over $50 million across all his seasons on Gold Rush and related operations. At the age of 23, his career total was already over $30 million worth of gold. Season 15, which aired in 2024, was his most lucrative by dollar value, producing $18.3 million worth of gold, driven largely by record-high gold prices at the time. By his peak seasons, Parker was regularly pulling more than 8,000 ounces in a single mining season. The company he founded, Little Flake Mining, grew from a single lease on Tony Beats's ground into one of the largest and most successful placer gold operations in the Yukon. The operation eventually expanded to multiple claims across the Klondike region, and Parker built a fleet of equipment that grew to over 60 machines, including multiple wash plants, excavators, and support vehicles. Each wash plant was given a name. Big Red, Roxanne, Bob, and others became familiar characters in their own right to Gold Rush viewers. The single biggest financial move of Parker's career came in 2023, when he paid approximately $15 million for a massive block of placer mining claims on Dominion Creek in the Klondike. That purchase was described as the single largest land investment in Gold Rush history. The scale of the ambition was matched only by the risk. Dominion Creek was expensive to operate, and Season 15 documented the financial pressure that came with running multiple wash plants simultaneously across difficult terrain. At several points during the season, Parker had already sunk $2.5 million into operations at Dominion Creek and was recovering just over $1 million in return. Season 16, which premiered on November 7, 2025, on Discovery Channel, became the season where Parker attempted to turn that investment into something legendary. His target was 10,000 ounces of gold, worth approximately $35 million at then-current gold prices, which had climbed to around $3,800 per ounce. Achieving that target required running 4 wash plants simultaneously for the first time in his career. He described it publicly as his biggest mining experiment ever. Daily operating costs with all 4 plants running approached $100,000. meaning every single day that passed without enough gold coming out of the ground was a day that cost him more than most people earn in a month. The Dominion Creek operation spread across multiple sites. Tyson Lee ran 2 wash plants at the primary Dominion site. Longtime foreman Mitch Blaschke managed a 3rd plant called Roxanne at the Indian River site. Sulphur Creek added a 4th location. The logistical complexity of keeping all 4 plants fed, running, and productive at the same time was unlike anything Parker had attempted before. Equipment breakdowns, wildfire threats, water license deadlines, and the constant pressure of a $100,000 daily burn rate all contributed to a season that Gold Rush viewers described as one of the most intense in the show's history. In 2022, before the Dominion Creek purchase, Parker received the Robert E. Leckie Award for Excellence in Environmental Stewardship from the Yukon government. The award recognized his reclamation work at the Little Flake Placer mine and at legacy areas previously mined by earlier generations. It was a rare recognition for any placer miner, and it highlighted something that the cameras did not always capture. Parker ran an environmentally responsible operation, not just a profitable one. His approach to land reclamation and his investment in long-term mining sustainability earned respect from the government and from the broader mining community in the Yukon. What Parker Schnabel looks like today. Parker Schnabel is 31 years old as of 2025. The teenager who once nervously managed his grandfather's mine crew is now one of the most experienced and most respected figures in the Yukon mining world. He is unmarried and has no children, a fact he has never seemed particularly troubled by in any public conversation. The mining life he chose at 18 has only grown more demanding with time, not less, and he has leaned into that reality rather than away from it. Gold Rush Season 16, actively airing through the end of 2025 and into early 2026, shows a Parker who operates with a confidence that his earlier seasons only hinted at. He manages a 10,000-acre mining operation in the Klondike, described in the show itself as the largest operation in the Yukon. He carries himself differently now than the eager teenager audiences first watched. Each wash plant was given a name. Big Red, Roxanne, Bob, and others became familiar characters in their own right to Gold Rush viewers. There is less visible anxiety and more calculated patience. He has been through enough bad seasons and enough equipment disasters to know that panic changes nothing. The rivalry and mutual respect between Parker and Tony Beets has continued to be one of the show's most compelling threads. The man who once leased Parker his first Klondike ground at a royalty rate that heavily favored his own operation now watches as his former young tenant runs a bigger operation than his own. Season 16, data shows Parker managing nearly 2,900 ounces of gold worth over $10 million, while Tony's operation maintained steady production of around 2,300 ounces, worth over $8 million. Those numbers shift constantly, but the comparison tells its own story about how far Parker has come from the boy who needed Tony's ground just to get started. Rick Ness, the other veteran face on Gold Rush, has faced his own struggles in recent seasons, spending much of Season 15 trying to recover lost ground after a difficult campaign. His presence alongside Parker and Tony in Season 16 has given the show a new kind of tension, with 3 very different philosophies about mining, playing out simultaneously on the same stretch of Yukon territory. Beyond the television work, Parker has continued to build the Little Flake mining brand. His business extends well beyond what gets filmed for any given season. He manages relationships with water license authorities, environmental oversight bodies, and a crew that depends on him not just for a paycheck, but for the kind of leadership that keeps a dangerous operation safe. Gold mining in the Klondike is physically punishing work. Equipment fails constantly. Weather turns without warning. Ground that looks promising from the surface can produce nothing at depth. Parker has navigated all of these variables for over a decade and has built something lasting. The question that fans most often ask now is not whether Parker will succeed on Gold Rush. That question feels settled. The question is whether there is a ceiling to what he can build in the Klondike, and whether the television version of his life captures even a fraction of how big the real operation has become. Based on the Dominion Creek investment and the 4-plant ambition of Season 16, the answer seems to be that Parker himself does not believe in a ceiling. He keeps raising the target and then mining toward it. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.